Hello, everybody. Hello to the LinkedIn community. Welcome to the first episode of the Summer of Platform Organizations webinar series. I'm extremely excited to have all of you here and create a platform for open discussions of the future of organizing. I'm Shruthi Prakash, your co host for this discussion, and I'm thrilled to have Luca Ruggeri with us. Luca is one of the founding members of Boundaryless and is the platform design micro enterprise lead at the organization. He also comes with extensive experience in planning and implementing platform strategies across multiple industries and organizations from around the world. Today, he will be facilitating this webinar for us. Among us, we also have a panel of some industry veterans who have been kind enough to join us today, right at the start of the week. So, today, to discuss on the topic of venture building and platform organizations, we have Valentina Primo. She's the founder of Startup Without Borders, a global platform spotlighting diversity in entrepreneurship. And we have Ilaria Fava, managing partner of B-yond Ventures, startup ecosystems builder, coordinator of Rome Startup Angels Network, investor, and corporate M&A lawyer. As most of you know, at Boundaryless, we create open source frameworks and knowledge pods for platform design and entrepreneurial organization development and support a global community of organizations, institutions, and individuals through our workshops, trainings, and consulting services. We've been at the forefront of this for over a decade now, and I'm excited to be a part of this journey as well. I would like to nudge all of the listeners today to keep this session interactive. Please drop in any questions you might have, thoughts, or feedbacks in the comment section, and I will take it up with our panelists. We would be happy to discuss this as well. And one last point before we begin, I would also like to inform our listeners that we have an online workshop coming up soon. So that's on the strategies and structures for product portfolio innovation. It's happening in September online, and we would like to share a special discount for code for all the listeners today. And I'll be sharing it at the end of the episode, so please do stick around till then. And now, without any further ado, let's get started. Luca, over to you.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, Valentina and Ilaria, for joining this session. So today I'm very excited because we are talking. I'm talking about two of my greatest passions. So one is platform thinking and platform organization. So how platform thinking reflects on the development of platform products. You all know, I mean, you're loyal listeners and active practitioners, so you know about the premises of platform thinking, looking at an ecosystem, understanding who can provide value, who can consume value, and how platform strategies can connect these two worlds together. And also how platform thinking reflects on organization. So we are publishing a lot of open source content about what we define as platform organizations and understanding how a new organizational structure is fundamentally connecting producing units inside an organization with consumers of this value inside the organization itself, and then how this organization publish the value propositions outside. So today we have a very particular perspective because the other passion I have is about startups and investments, especially those investments that are enabling the creation of innovation, impact, anyhow. So we are not referring to only strictly profit. And the interesting point to me is a kind of a provoking thought. So I'm assuming that you are all familiar with the basics of venture capitals, how venture capital work and how venture capital stimulating are stimulating innovation. And fundamentally, they are very, how can I say, harsh in the competition. So what they say is basically, I don't know how to select the winning idea, but anyhow, I need to support this innovation ecosystem. I need to invest. The best way I found, and I mean, this is something developed in the 80s and still working today. I give investments. I try to support several startups competing, maybe each other, or at least several startups in a portfolio. And then the market shows who can win this competition. And so it's not a perfect system, we all know, but it's working. We can also try to improve it, and we can identify how we can a little improve it and adding more indicators of success. It's not only profit, is maybe something else, but I mean, so far, this is what we have. And today, the provoking thought is we have venture capitals, and Ilaria will mainly talk about what could be maybe the key problems of venture capitals, especially from the perspective of the organization. So it's, I mean, something interesting. But then we also have Valentina as a representative of the other side. So startups that are looking for investment and, well, they accept this competition, but it's not like, I mean, it's not happy, to compete and trying to understand if maybe we are matching the expectation. And the third perspective, and then I'll shut up, promise, is the perspective I bring. Working with corporations, they have a very similar mission of the mission of a venture capital, because they need to develop something, they need to innovate inside the organization itself. They do this in a traditional way, so trying to appoint people, create teams, give funds, resources to develop something. But this is a kind of a broken pattern, because you have no guarantees that if you make a perfect team, a lot of resources, then your product will succeed. Because the dynamics now are a little more complicated. We have a global competition and blah, blah, blah. So the provoking thought is, why don't corporations are behaving or are taking the best of venture capital ecosystem and startup ecosystem and try to mimic the same behaviors in their own? So this is the provoking thoughts I would like to bring. Now, stop talking. I don't know who would like to go first if you have strong ideas. Otherwise, my first question would have been, what are the main challenges, especially from the organizational perspective, that you see today in the venture capital and startup ecosystem? I
Who
don't know
goes
who would
first?
like.
I think so. From I can speak about the startup perspective, and I think Ilaria, you could share a lot about the investment side. Feel free if you want to go first.
Okay. Well, I think, I mean, I take your provocation. I mean, that's very interesting, because that would be, from our perspective as an investor, it is key, cooperation with all the players of the ecosystem taken at large. So corporations are basically, in most cases, the key clients of startups. So a good cooperation with corporates make the success, or the success often, of a startup, because, and the key issues underlying that is methodology, approach, timing, which are completely different normally. So the timing, for a startup, it's always a matter of almost minutes. It's very strict timing. You need, to understand very quickly, not just because, you need to close a deal, and the quicker you close, the best it is under all profile, but also because, you have competitors worldwide, which are trying to do the same things you are doing. And the quicker you understand your trajectory and your position, and in that trajectory, doing, the understanding the whole process, understanding how to refine your offer. And, I'm speaking, of course, not just economic terms, but, your proposition, your value proposition, the best of you are, with respect to your competitors or with the market. So the first problem I've seen, with their relationship with corporates, is that they often, apply their usual terms, which they completely incompatible with, those startups, and did not even question whether that's an issue. They just apply without any kind of possibility to do anything different. And this is, I think, an occasion lost for both, for sure. But that's something we should be changed at the corporate level, eventually with the help of a specific, I think in that sense, what you were saying also, Luca, that, using a platform, could, help support this kind of objective, setting the common objectives, common goals, and then, checking that's happening, because the problem into organization is that it's never a decision of one person. There are several layers, there are several decision makers, and that makes the whole process much more complicated, to be understood for startups and to be, to get to the final, result. So anything that could simplify, the understanding for the startup, but also, the speed of the whole process would be key. The other element, of course, it's the mind, state of mind, so how you approach issues and how you impose your own targets on those of the startup. So that's another issue which is very kind of delicate for the startup, because it's it may influence its trajectories, its whole process, not necessarily in a good way. So that's why I think that would be very interesting to find some standardized way which could, set the goals, the attitude, the overall process at the very beginning. So to ensure that, these which may easily become some negative elements for the startups, for sure, may be contained, may be limited in their effects.
Thank you so much. And now I will hand it to Valentina, because in my experience also with corporation, when they try to apply the so famous open innovation paradigm, is that basically, and I totally resonate with what you said, Ilaria. No, so that a big mismatch, a big problem is that typically corporations are one of the main clients to startups, but the problem is that a corporation is trying to turn a startup into something else, into a provider or into a super supplier. So they're typically asking for personalization of products or maybe tailoring some. So they are forcing continuously the startup to go outside of the rails that maybe the startup agree with investors and so on. So this is part of the problem. What do you think, Valentina?
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the problem, and that's part of something. Because when we talk about, you started off with a very provoking question, right? Why can't corporates mimic startups in terms of innovation and the rhythm? And I think there is a fundamental difference, which is corporates, because of their structure and because of their processes, do not have that flexibility to go, outside the norm, to pivot as many times as needed as a startup would do, to test products continuously in the market. So I think there is a fundamental difference from the point of view of how they operate each. And there's definitely the opportunity for contamination and for collaboration. But as you said, if the corporate starts to kind of outline the borders, right, the boundaries of what a startup can and cannot do, then you are kind of limiting that power or that potential for innovation. And that's one of the things. There's another thing that I wanted to kind of point out, looking at it from a global perspective, right? So looking at the macro level and looking at the trends in terms of what VCs are looking at and what, the industries are going towards. Because I love the mixture of, the boundary-less webinar. We also talk a lot about borders at Startups Without Borders and the importance of creating those trans-border connections, right? And I think today we have a challenge. Both VCs, corporates, and startups, they have a challenge in terms of capital allocation and distribution. So, we're seeing two macro trends happening at that level, which are AI, of course, on the one hand, and there is competitive advantage for in many regions for that. But on the other hand, we also have climate tech and clean tech, right? Which is there is a very strong trend and a very strong push for that. And in that sense, we are seeing very, very good startups with high potential coming from emerging markets, because they know the problems and the consequences of global warming, and they know them better than anyone else. So if we look at the challenges, we can see there are these bubbles, right, where the ecosystems are placed, which are hard sometimes to break. We all talk about creating these borderless connections and these intercultural connections, but the fact of the matter is there is bias that remains. There is bias, and we still see huge gender gap in terms of investing in female-led startups. We still see huge bias in terms of investing in people of color. In the US, they call it BIPOC as well. So there is a lot of challenges in terms of getting more diversity, but I'm not just talking about the diversity, but I'm also talking about the distribution of, these startups and where they are stemming from, and the challenges that they are solving, right? Because the potential is there. The markets are huge in many of these emerging markets. We work a lot in Egypt, where you have 110 million people. We look at India, we look at Pakistan, we look at economies that are pushing and have startup ecosystems that are growing massively. But there is a lack of capital, and there is a lack of visibility and deal flow, right? So how can we create that connection? And corporates, going back to your question, Luca, I do think they have a role to play, and I do think there is a lot of promising opportunities there. But again, like how can those connections be made?
Well, thanks for this, and also for making me realize that we have Boundless, we have Startup Without Borders, but we also have B-yond Ventures with Ilaria. So maybe implicitly, when I, I was thinking about organizing this webinar, I mean, I would like really to go beyond. I mean, to go boundless, to go without borders, and that's important. Also, thinking, listening to both of you, that well, of course, we are all passionate about startups and unicorns. I mean, this is the fancy trend that we are connected with. But I mean, somehow not all startups are necessarily to be or to become a unicorn, because as you said, no, we can also have a huge impact, also stimulating continuous innovation in the local geographies. And under this perspective, corporations, they can really make a difference, because they're not only looking for purchasing or acquiring or merging with unicorns, ideally, so representing an exit possibility for the startups, but for the startups that are not making that. So you're all familiar with the mathematics of the power law of ventures. So one is having a big win, maybe a couple of they are having a meaningful return. Most of them, 7 to 8, are failing. But failing, this is also a famous mistake. Failing doesn't mean, as in Italy we define failure. So it's not about winding down. In most of cases, it's a successful idea that is not scaling as fast as or as large as a unicorn, but it's still maybe a good idea. And in that perspective, corporation, they can continue supporting those ideas and turning them into viable value propositions. I have a side question on this one. How, if assuming that it is possible, what should we tell a corporation to focus on if this corporation would like to become similar to a venture capital or a venture builder? What's the best advice? So what's the key metrics or the key moonshot or the North Star that we want to tell the corporation to follow when approaching this new paradigm?
Okay, I go first. Well, it's a very tough question. They still, I don't think, we have a clear, answer to it. But clearly, I think, also corporations should start learning from their mistakes, and so there have been very clear mistakes, not only actually, I would say, from corporation, but also from large investor in general. And after corporation, they choose, they can have several approach as an investor, creating their own VC firm, or and so investing in general, and or having a sort of let's call it accelerator or activity, where they not only invest, but they invest where they want to grow strategically as a company. And so where they create very strategic, basically, investment and strategic agreements with the to go when not necessarily initially, but in perspective. So with respect to the first, I think that one of the issue that we all face, and I think sometimes family office, but also corporation may face, or more or less, is that there are often linked to person, with their own
Hmm.
personal goals, okay, which is also some things we do not see, but which may raise quite a key issue, because, as a VC, the perspective is long term. You often hear about investor thinking about 5-6 year, term of investment. That's, clearly, from people who do not really know, what does it mean VC investing. So um, you need to have, a long-term vision, and you need to have a long-term perspective. So that's, I think, key. So even 10 years sometimes is not enough. Okay. So that's why I appreciate a lot. I think it's a great, they are great instrument, those rolling funds, which really, can align their interest with that of the startups and keep, sustaining eventually, or keep waiting, for the exit for the time which is necessary, because, the market can change a lot. The needs of the singles, the various startups you're in portfolio vary a lot, over time. So that's pretty key. So if you have, a manager with specific, or you give manager, in corporation, you give that specific department a specific medium term, not even short, but medium term objective, then you will change significantly the way you invest, and the goals you reach. So I think that's something which should be set very clear from the start. So now what you want to have, and try to do the best to ensure that, whomever is going to manage the fund, is going to take the key decision, is going to be aligned with those, with those objectives, because they influence the way you decide, the way you invest, and the whole, because it's not just investing at the very initial stage, but it's also what you do at, during the life of, of the company. So you can do follow on, you can, be leader in the follow on, you can take, a role which may differ a lot, and that's really can make the difference for the life of a startup. So and I think that in that perspective, corporation and the way they approach, with a truly market perspective, rather than corporate perspective. So it's very key. So they should align to the best standard of the market, and having, strong, shoulder given by, what normally big corporation have, they should try to use them for the best, for their best interest in the long term. So I think that's a vision that they should, have in everything they do in terms of partnership, and in terms, because in the long term, the interest align entirely. The problem is that if you make the interest shorter, and then it's completely different result. And the other way is how you choose the person that, work in that department. So, corporate attitude and startup attitude are, taking a line at the two opposite of, so you clearly have to be sure that, you select well the person who are going to work for you. And also you do not influence during, after that, with the corporate attitude, the startup, approach, but rather vice versa, because that would be very beneficial to the company. But that's, the power of the company is much higher. And so it's, cases that, that's gonna, the risk is much higher that's, it's gonna influence and condition, the way, the whole process is done at VC level, the investment level, at the accelerator level, and also when negotiating, when negotiating partnership. A partnership is, has a meaning, strategically has a meaning. It means, finding a partner. So it really should be taught with that in mind. So not in a way of just one single party trying to best his, best interest, and at whatever cost. So thinking so as more as an entrepreneur, also at corporate level, and with specific reference to the market you're entering and to what are the needs for them, and also for you in the long term. I think that will be key for both, for the growth of both.
Thank you, Ilaria. This is really foundation also for the concept of platform organizations, because what they're trying to do, and the organizational artifacts and interaction we are developing for the platform organization, are essentially saying that no matter what, we are trying to create a very lean organizational perspective, getting rid of all the hierarchies and implicit things or relationships and so on. Everything is fundamentally based on key interactions, key interfaces, mostly contracts. So what you do in practice is, okay, I am a brand. I would like to identify the value providers within the organization and I turn them into micro enterprises that are autonomous with an independent profit and loss. We can consider them as startups. And as a platform organizational brand, what I do is I give them capitals if they need it. I give them resources. I give them enabling capabilities. It could be HR, legal, finance, but it could also be a technology. It could be an algo, an AI, whatever. No, it could be considered as an asset that this company can provide. And then we establish clear conditions, transparent conditions for everyone. We write them into term sheets. So that's the parallel between the two universes. No? We have contracts and we have the term sheets, but they are declaring the same objectives, the same conditions, also how the revenues are shared. And basically that's it. So these are systems that are trying to gradually, of course, step by step, transform organizations as if they are venture builders. And it's very interesting that you mentioned among the two main problems. One is also in the venture capital, a problem of organizing, because venture capitals are complex living things. No, you have managing partners, but then you have general partners, you have limited partners, and then you have venture partners, the associates, principals, and then you have analysts, and then you have mentors and operating partners. So it's really complex. And on the other side, also startups, of course, they are maybe a little simpler because they are focused on a mission, on a purpose, and on a value proposition. But they are a networking thing. So they are a networking organism because they can't really make it if they are alone in the vacuum. They need to interact continuously with venture capitals, with all this constellation of roles. And the more they are capable of interacting, the more they can amplify the probability of success, because in most of cases, it's not about how good it is your idea, but how your idea is accepted, how your idea is considered valuable, and how your idea is integrated into someone's living or business processes. So these are the two aspects, community and organization, and both startups and venture capitals, they can say a lot of, and I agree with your point of it's good to have a bi-directional relationship, but in some cases it's better if we can make it into make it unidirectional, because we need to cross-pollinate the right approach. So long story short, let's separate a little bit and asking Valentina first. What are the community aspects of the startup ecosystem? So how relevant are these community elements, and what does it mean for a startup to be part of a community? And are these communities organized? So someone is trying also to think about collective venture capitals or distributed venture capitals, or blurring the boundaries between startups and investors and mentors, because I mean, in any case, I mean, also startups are co-opting each other and so on. So you know what I mean.
Definitely. And I love that you asked this, because I had just written down, I made a note for myself in the previous question that, ecosystems, when you talk about how corporate can also nurture innovation and become a bit more like startups, ecosystem was a key part, right? Ecosystem, the value of community, the power of community. So I think that creating that, and I think, platform organizations, as you just said, are a powerful tool for that, right? Creating based on your industry, based on your sector, creating more than a space to collaborate with startups, but more than that, an ecosystem where startups can thrive, right? And what I've seen from our experience at Startups Without Borders is that, in an ecosystem, every part has such a fundamental role, and we must not forget the role that media has. Must not forget the role that academia has as well, right? In terms of fueling that innovation as well, R&D, research, and there is the capital aspect, which is very, very important. There is the corporate aspect, the mentors, the investor. Everyone has a role to play. So when we think about building a community, it's not just, gathering entrepreneurs and having them connect to each other, which is fundamental as well, connecting them to capital, which is a key element, connecting them to corporates and potential collaborations and partners, but also bringing in those other parties, government, academia, media, those other, elements or players that in an ecosystem play a fundamental role. And we see, of course, that role played out in very different shapes and forms and capacities in different regions. We see, in Europe, government has a huge role and has been playing a huge role. In other emerging countries, not as much. Perhaps it was more, privately fueled, and then government stepped in. Academia, same thing. They started jumping on that bandwagon a bit later, but it's fundamental. And if I think, for example, within our experience at Startups Without Borders, right, how do we build community? Channels are constantly being updated, changed, revised, and we keep exploring different channels. But something we realized very early on when we started, if we want to build an ecosystem, a startup ecosystem, yes, we can have a platform to connect people. Yes, we can have different online channels. But we started running events because we realized the power that is created by bringing people together and creating those discussions, sparking those discussions and those debates in a space that provides opportunities for networking, right? And yes, for many of us, networking seems like a buzzword initially. Networking seems like something nice to have, like a trend. But in reality, most results that a startup obtains are stemming from some connection they made at some point, either in an event or through another partner or investor, mentor, or so on. So I do think that, in terms of creating community, it's not just one platform. It really requires different approaches that need to come, contemporarily. It needs to have a vibrating environment, or a vibrant environment where people can come together. And again, entrepreneurs need to be able to connect with other entrepreneurs. No one other than entrepreneurs will understand and perhaps be as open as another entrepreneur to collaborate with each other. They need to have access to capital and access to investors. And it's not just the pitch. We always tell entrepreneurs, like, you don't need to just go and pitch, but build a relationship with that mentor, with that investor, and have that relationship. And the same when we think about corporates, right? There is a very similar mechanism of relationship building that needs to happen within an ecosystem. So to make things short, I do believe corporates, can build their own ecosystem, their own innovation ecosystems. And I think that would be a very interesting way when embarking into entrepreneurship or thinking of collaborating with startups.
If I can add,
Okay.
I totally
Yeah,
agree,
please.
Oh, sorry, Luca.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I totally agree. The same story, for investor too. We all need to build our ecosystem, vertically or horizontally, it's absolutely key. And networking may be a buzzword, but it's still a reality, it's totally key, and even better if you do it in person. You need a trust relationship. And once you build that makes completely the difference, I am totally doing that every day as an investor, and that's actually helped grow a net of other investor with whom we invest together, not only investing in in B-yond Venture, but also having a like-minded approach other investor with whom sharing deals, sharing valuation, getting support where you do not have specific skill to understand better a startup to support that at a later stage. So it's really key for funding in getting to the opportunities, evaluating opportunities, and having a bigger significant impact while investing, because the more you are, clearly the more you can invest, especially at the early stage, because that's where seed stage we invest. That's really key. That makes the difference, because it's not just money. but it's, its relationship, its support is, it's completely a lot of other elements where, being a group of a like-minded investor can make the difference. So, and of course, you have also to have relationship, vertical relationship, downstream and upstream, because, the more you get and you build your, trust relationship with, investor at, earlier or later stage, that helps the whole funding process also for your portfolio company. So it's all about relations. It's really like the ecosystem. It's key, and it's all about that.
Yeah, I'm resonating. We did a lot because it happened that I just landed back from San Francisco the first time of my life, and maybe too late in my life. I maybe should have gone there way earlier. And then, of course, I mean, I'm not saying that is the Eden Garden. Of course, there's a lot of show off and so on. But what is really true is that there, everyone you meet, also occasionally for a coffee, can tell you a story and can maybe tell you, okay, well, I don't know what you do, but I have some friends we should talk to, and this is continuously happening all the day. This is also something that is starting happening here in Italy and in many other countries, of course, but we need to learn a little. One of the potential, I wouldn't say them issues, but maybe areas of improvement that I'm recalling is that all this networking is by necessity done on a voluntary basis. I see why, and I also don't want to change this. But it's not working for everyone. So Valentina mentioned the academy, and also you, Ilaria, you mentioned a series of actors that are giving back. So that's fine, they can contribute. But there are a lot of actors that maybe they need to have an entitlement or an approval before interacting with startups. So they need something, they need some paperwork to do that, agreements or something like this. And that's why I see a lot of big accelerators, big venture capitals, or big communities trying to standardize the way people are interacting within certain roles. So there are standard, safe term sheets for early stage investment. There are PACT for getting in touch or trying to have the approval from the limited partners. There are standard agreements for advisors. So the industry is trying to standardize, I think, for the specific purpose of stimulating and reducing the transaction costs of certain relationships. And this is good. And this is one of foundational beliefs of platform organizations as well. And I think that we should go on this direction. So if we really want to have a distributed anything, it could be distributed community, distributed venture capital, we need to go on with this standardization process. Challenging question for both of you, or maybe to Ilaria first, could be, is it really possible? I mean, now we are saying that corporations should take the best of, or the best from, venture capital and startup industry. Have you experienced the other way around? So is it really possible for a corporation to partner with a venture capital, not only from the perspective of investors? So of course, a company can be a limited partner for a venture capital. This is happening continuously. But are maybe VCs ready to work as an innovation center or an advisor company for a corporation, or this is not really a good approach in the industry?
Well, as I said, I think, as I said before, it's already happening. There are a lot of, at different levels, big corporation, but also smaller one who are investing in funds because they want the opportunity to have an eye, what's happening, and to also have the opportunity, and that's, in many, agreements, investment agreements, regulation apply to funds, to have opportunity at a later stage when follow up opportunity arise to invest in that, in the company, which are a portfolio company of the fund. So that's already happening. That's not just because it's a good investment, but because it's a good investment, giving also some highlights, some vision, some elements which may be beneficial, to not necessarily in the short term, but also in the medium long term to the company. So I think it's something have already realized that it's a value for them, to not necessarily be only directly involved in acceleration or indirect investment, but also do it indirectly through, more specialized subjects, so as VC funds or other entities, which through which have an updated view on what's happening in the world of venture capital, in general, and so also investing in multi funds, and also have, develop direct connection with the players, and also, opportunity to co-invest at a later stage when it's more suitable for them, so not only, at very early stage. So that's something which I think it's it's very interesting for them, and it's working, in my opinion, working well.
Okay, thank you. Maybe, well, one of the last question from my side, because we are approaching also to the end of the live event. This could be a little tricky again, but both of you can answer from two different perspectives. So Ilaria from her role of a managing partner, and Valentina as a role of a accelerator and bridging community. How complex is to organize your work as a managing partner of a fund or of an accelerator? So, I mean, of course, I know that it's hard, but do you miss anything today that we should have? And in the organizational way, I'm talking about maybe organizational structures, contracts, or relationship, whatever it is. What do you feel is missing, still missing yet in the ecosystem from the managing partner perspective?
Valentina, you want to go? Or I go very shortly, and you
No,
want
I thought the question was for you.
for you?
Um,
Okay,
No,
fine.
well,
Sorry, no.
for both, Valentina, because also you have a role of organizing the acceleration program. So, well, it's not the same role, but it is similar in the complexity of organizing. So, the general question is, what's missing yet in the organizational perspective from both the venture capital and the acceleration perspective? Or maybe you can tell, oh, yeah, we have everything we we need,
yeah.
We
and that's
never have
fine.
everything.
So I think from our perspective, and it's interesting because on the one hand, we say we would love to have frameworks for collaborations, right? How do we, as an incubator and an accelerators, and we're an ecosystem builder, right? So how do we have frameworks for different kinds of collaborations, right, with corporates? And the truth is there are none. There are guidelines, there are examples, there are a lot of programs that we've run in different ways. So on the one hand, we don't have those frameworks. But on the other hand, it is exciting to keep innovating them, because the way we build them is we look at an objective and a challenge, and we build based upon that. So it keeps reinventing itself. The model keeps reinventing itself, right? So it's part of our work to reinvent that model and to create different forms of collaboration that are innovative. But at the same time, I do think, it would facilitate the process to have those kinds of frameworks. Like when I think about it from the point of view of, an entrepreneurship support organization or an ecosystem builder. So I think frameworks would be interesting.
I totally agree. I mean, framework is key, and organization is key for all of us, all the players. And I think there is still a huge ground for improving, in terms of organization and also data processing of information. And that will facilitate a lot the work for all of us, I think that, that concern at all level. That's happening in terms of, evaluation of company KPI, all the elements of the KPI. How do you assess that? How you to put them in perspective? How you have that in a way that it's not too burdensome for the startup? How, do you also understand and the target of each investor or VC fund, so that you reach and have a vision on which one may best suits your goal or your strategy. So I think everything, and also you spoke before about contracts. Of course, I'm a lawyer, so I think that standardization is another element which simplify the process. It's reduce the transaction cost, but it's just in general, increase the level of trust, because it simplify the process. What you're getting in a way. That that's kind of standards may have differences, but also when you have to look at it at the second time, you do not have to review a new contract every time, which makes a lot of requires a lot of time and effort. So it really makes the whole management of the investments easier, and also easier under all profile negotiation, lateral cost of consultants, and also review time, understanding time, later on review time when anything happens, unexpected evaluation elements, that so it increased the level of trust, makes the overall process easier. So I think trust is a key element. So everything which helps in doing that, and in that sense, I think it's very important that the trust is considered as a key element for all players. So everyone should have respect for the others and their all profile, and not trying to kind of apply policy or impose contracts which significantly negatively have effects on early on investor, and because that's may create a distrust elements which affects investments at a later stage and complicate the whole process. So I think that trust should be kept as a value element all along the line, by all the investor and all the players, startups and everyone basically. So the more these elements there is, the easier is for the ecosystem to grow and for the whole startup to access to finance and investor to finance. So it's really at the end a core element, which of course all the platform and organization initially can significantly improve and help in understanding better for at all levels.
Thank you. Maybe Lucas, I can, go ahead from my side. I've been, listening to the entire conversation, and I think there are many, let's say, points that stood out for me. So let's say how organizations can behave or use VC builders to accelerate their internal external innovation, how there is lack of capital or deal flow, as you said, towards marginalized communities or emerging markets, and how, let's say, more focus has to go towards that. And yeah, I mean, like the closing which you mentioned on the point of trust as well as a key value element. So before we close for the day, I wanted to ask both of you if you have any key takeaways for our audience to sort of remember on points that come at the intersection of venture building and platform organizations. You can maybe share from your experience of projects that you've done, if there are any, let's say, flagship projects that people can learn from as well, which come at the intersection of two, that would be really helpful. Maybe Valentina, you can start and then.
Yeah. So a few one of the programs we did recently that I think set a very interesting milestone for us in terms of building ecosystems beyond borders. It was an incubation program that we did in a hybrid model, online and offline, right? We worked in 3 different countries in the Middle East. We incubated 130 startups, and it was a 5-month program whereby it was industry agnostic, but 50% of the founders were refugees. So we had, and 65% were women. women founders, right? So we had a very interesting diversity. There were ed tech startups, there were a lot of agri-tech startups, there were clean tech startups. The winning actually was a clean tech water startup. And so we had a semifinals with all startups pitching, an international jury composed of really key players in startup ecosystems in Europe, in USA, in the Middle East. So we gathered different continents as well. And we had partners such as 500 Global, Plug and Play, Techstars, so really big players in the startup ecosystems judging those startups. We had mentors involved as well from around the world. So we have a very large community of mentors. We have more than 700 mentors today in our platform that join. And these include CTOs and CEOs of very large corporations. I don't know if I can mention them, but we have partners of VCs as well that act as mentors. So these startups receive mentorship and guidance from really key players across industries and people with matured experience across the board. And then the 10 finalists, we flew them to Amsterdam for a global event to pitch in front of partners, corporates, investors, VCs at Ignite conference in Amsterdam. And it proved very successful because the startups were able to build relationships. So it's not just about the prize that they won at the final competition, but it's really about the partnerships and the networks they were able to build for themselves. Today, we are seeing these startups taking part in competitions, accelerations, raising funds across the US, across Asia, across Europe. So we are really seeing them expand beyond borders thanks to that network that they were able to build. Let's not forget that oftentimes when we have a mentor connecting from Dubai or Spain with a startup based in Lebanon, for example, they open up a lot of opportunities by connecting them to different partners, right? So that's how the network effect works. And I think this program for us was a key milestone and a key example of how can we really help the startups build a bigger network and, think globally. Also in terms of the feedback that they receive when it comes to their product, right? Not just to focus, they can start in their local market, but really, really think globally.
That's absolutely key, thinking globally, and having global relationship. It's also when I was saying about upstream and downstream, relationship and networking, that should not be local, only, but should clearly be, the more it's international, the more you your overall understanding for under all profile of your own business, of how to manage your growth, international growth, how to assess the funds, venture funds, but also in general to how to manage your fundraising. It's key. It's key you have an international perspective. And of course also a local, because that's the old rule of kilometer zero, relationship, that are the one, the family and friends, and the kilometer zero immediately after, the one that sustain you at the very early stage, is still true. So you need to build up whatever you want to build on the basis of that, but then immediately look globally, internationally, for testing your own idea, for understanding, funding, tutors and investors, also at the international level, because that can really bring you a lot of value. It's not just money, again, especially at the early stage, that's what I said already, but it's it's smart money, because it's all the connection, the relationship, the support, the experience investor bring to the table. And also, if they are not investor, they can be a key contributor, so to an understanding of what's happening in the world, how you could feel, you could find your space, and where better to start, and what. So it's really key, I think. And at my level, I can say that of course we are working on building that. Actually, as investor based in Rome, we're working. I'm board member of Roma Startup, and we are just we just launched and working on first activity of the Rome Startup chapter, an investor chapter, which has exactly this goal, creating connection with investor already investing in Rome, in the region, in Italy, and also internationally, and also bringing to the table those which have, the capabilities at all levels, for, becoming future investor, because the more we grow in terms of numbers and in terms of qualities, the more, the whole ecosystem is going to benefit. And the more we create valuable relationship at the national, international level in particular, the more the overall practice, we apply, and the overall growth of the ecosystem is going to be fast and in the right direction. So I think that's really key for all of us, to go in the same direction and contribute, to the overall, because at the end it's a lot of local ecosystem which need to, to connect. And so I think, Valentina, you're doing an awesome job in doing that, and also connecting with the European and global ecosystem. So it's really like something which I think it should be taken as an example also. So, and we all should, work each one at his own level to make that possible.
Thank you. I mean, I'm personally extremely inspired by both of your journeys, so it's really nice to hear. And Luca, if there are no other, let's say, questions from your side, anything else, Luca, from your side?
No, 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 not really, not really. I'm super happy about having this conversation. So it's really something we need to further explore. I mean, also
Yeah.
step into technicalities, but I mean, this is really great for an intro. Also because we need to understand that our typical audience that is interested into platform thinking and platform organization is not definitely familiar with startups and venture capital. So I think it's
Yeah.
a first step into this one, and I hope they would like to know more. Super
Yeah, I
happy,
hope
happy.
that
Thanks to you all.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that we can definitely sort of push the boundaries. I think, like you said, the audience that we have here and the guests that we have are sort of in that path, right? And even I just wanted to highlight the comments that we got as well were on the lines of how to sort of break bureaucracy and question the standards and templates that have been set, and how to sort of grow and, sort of grow from that and prevent any slowdown that startups can face. So I'm extremely happy that this conversation happened. And of course, I want to thank both of you for joining in today and taking a very open discussion. I know it's a Monday morning, and I really sort of appreciate the effort and intent that you all have put into this conversation. For the listeners, I just again wanted to highlight that we have uh, program that's happening shortly. I can just quickly share my screen. I just wanted to share the um, discount code that we have. Give me a second. Okay, give me 1 minute.
It's always a mind blowing effect. I love it.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we have a quick webinar that's happening. So, it's on the strategies and structures for product portfolio innovation. It's happening online in September. So, do reach out if you're interested. In case you would like to have more such webinars as well, do let us know. And again, thank you, all of you, for listening in. Thank you, Luca, for taking us through this entire webinar as well. And I hope that we can have more such discussions on platforms like this going forward. And thanks to both of you for joining. And hopefully, see you all next time. And remember to think boundaryless. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to all.